name is Sean Tucker. I'm the great-grandson of Preston Tucker, and we're here with a pretty special car. This is Tucker number 34. This is the 34th Tucker out of the 51 originally built. This car is Tucker body number 37 and car number 34, which was pretty common that they didn't have a matching body and car number. Some cars do, this car doesn't. This car is a very special Tucker in that it's one of the most original that still exists. So this car's been painted at least once, but never to the point where they disassembled the whole car and took every nut and bolt off. So a lot of the parts that are installed are still installed the way the factory did it. So that's a pretty special thing for us. So when we're doing a restoration on one of these cars, we're really trying to look for, what did they do? And Tuckers are different from a lot of some of the other types of restorations where each car really is kind of its own thing. They were doing a number of engineering changes and things like that. People talk about these as the production Tuckers, but they're really all pilot prototype models. So everyone has its own unique set of circumstances. So when a car is this intact, down to the rubber on the windows, the weather strips on the doors, things like that, that when they repainted it last time, they didn't take them out, which maybe at that time was a little less of a concours type paint job. That's really great for us because everything is still there, so we can see them. So Tuckers have some pretty unique features, probably the most unique of which is the 3 headlights in the front. It's a pretty unique look for the vehicle. The headlights actually don't all come on at the same time. So I think a lot of people that see these cars think that you turn the headlights on and they all 3 come on and it turns with the wheels and it's on all the time. That's not the case at all. So it's actually only designed to be on with the high beams and only when the wheels turn more than 10 degrees. And like I talked about a little before, each Tucker being unique, there's actually 2 completely different mechanisms they use to do that. So early cars use a mechanical linkage type system, and the later cars like this one use a cable that's connected to the steering box and another set of linkage to turn the light on. So the lens itself stays fixed, so this part does not actually turn. There's a spotlight that's inside of this housing that is actually the piece that turns. There's a whole bucket mechanism in there that turns that spotlight around. So we'll show you kind of how that works here. So when you turn the wheel, turning inside the housing rather than the whole housing turning, which makes a little bit keeps it a little cleaner on the front end and makes it so the look of the car stays intact. The other interesting thing about the 3rd headlight is in some states back in 1948 it was actually not legal to have 3 headlights. So Tucker had designed, and there's a blueprint and everything for this, they had designed a cover that goes over this so that headlight couldn't work. So that's pretty interesting. We've never seen one on an actual car and don't know if they ever actually made any of them, but it is a part that exists, so that's pretty interesting. So one of the more unique features of the Tucker, obviously, is the rear engine, which most people know about, and I guess maybe not everybody knows about it, but there was a couple of different plans for the rear engine from when the company started to where they ended up. So they were originally planning on designing their own 589 cubic inch flat 6 that had no transmission at all. It had torque converters on each end. And just in the process of testing and development, they probably worked on it a little bit too long before they decided to go a different direction. But what they finally ended up on was a motor that was made by a company called Air-Cooled Motors. And they had the brand Franklin, which used to make cars, and they had air-cooled cars back in the teens and I think even the 20s. But this was an air-cooled helicopter engine, which they then turned into a water-cooled engine. So we'll take a look at that. So the center section of the engine is mostly Franklin. So from the crankcase, which is in the center here, this is mostly Franklin parts. Everything from about here up is Tucker. So they cast their own cylinders, they cast their own cylinder heads, and then did this different style intake system to make it work. So the exhaust comes out the bottom, the intake's on the top, and then the radiator's in the back here, and that's how it cools the vehicle. It's got a mechanically driven fan, that runs off the crankshaft in the bottom here, and the water pump's on top. So all of these parts are, the cool thing is they designed all these parts from scratch, which there's tons and tons and tons of designs and blueprints to show all that stuff. The difficult thing when you're trying to service one of these cars is that it's all Tucker specific parts. So when you run into a situation where a part's either broken, missing, or just worn out, you often have to make the parts because you can't buy it. So that becomes quite a challenge to overcome, but that ends up being one of the kind of more exciting parts of working on these cars. So Tucker 34, as we mentioned, is a remarkably original example of a Tucker. And even looking at things like the window glass and the rubber around the window, all of that stuff on this car is original. So one thing Tuckers are known for is having a pop-out safety windshield. And they had designed for the rubber that holds the glass in that was pretty unique in order to make that happen. This car still retains its original rubber seal, which is pretty rare. Usually you see cars that have been, a lot of these cars were outside at times and left in barns and things like that. And the rubber just deteriorates over time, dry rots, and to the point where you can't use it. But this one, at least as it's installed now, appears to be functioning, which is pretty special. In addition to that, the glass itself is the original glass. So we look for, when we're doing an inspection of one of these cars, we'll look for the original maker's marks and date codes on the glass. And both sides of this glass is actually the glass that was installed at the Tucker factory. So that's another thing that's pretty unique. And in looking at some of the other pieces of the car, there is a few pieces of glass on this that have been replaced, but for the most part it retains most of its original glass, which is, again, pretty special for a car of this age in any make, but particularly a Tucker. So when they painted this car the last time, I mentioned they didn't really disassemble it all the way. It even went down to the point where they taped around a lot of the rubber seals, including the hood seal, the door seals, and the rubber on the windows and things that I mentioned. That's a really cool thing for us because it lets us be able to see the original installed condition. And even, we can look at the blueprints and things to see some of the designs and things like that, but there's so many iterations that sometimes you don't know what ended up in the car. And when you see an actual physical example of it that still has it installed, it's not a question. So even down to the places that they made the cuts to install and butt the rubber together, things like that, you just can't get any other way. So to have it still there is really, really cool. So we're going to be doing a whole bunch of work on Tucker 34 in the upcoming months, really trying to get it back to really a usable car so that it has the suspension functions the way it should, the engine and transmission function the way they should. Not that they don't function, but getting them to a point where they're really, in usable condition as good as we can get it. So we're here at Ida Automotive, who is our partner in this project. Rob and Bob have been an integral part of a lot of the things we do, and we're happy to have them on board for this one, along with the whole crew at Ida Automotive. So that's going to be the basis for the project. We're going to be trying to follow this whole project with as many videos as we can and keep it interesting for everybody to show some of the other parts of Tucker 34. The interior on this car is probably one of the most, or maybe even the most original interior that's still in fairly good condition. So we do know of another car that's got its original interior. It's a different color, but this one is really presentable and looks the way that a Tucker should, so that's pretty cool. So if you like what you're seeing in these videos, please like and subscribe to our channel. We're going to try to put as many of these together as we can so that people can see the history of Tucker 34, but also the history of Tuckers in general. We're going to try to give people a view of the cars that they probably wouldn't get any other way. We're also, if you'd like to check us out elsewhere, we're on Facebook at Preston Tucker LLC and Ida Automotive. We're also on Instagram at Rob Ida and Sean at Sean Tucker 48 and at Mike Tucker 48.